The metal key felt cold between my fingers, slick with the sweat of a long day. I had just finished my last exam of the semester and couldn't wait to collapse into my bed, order cheap takeout and sleep for a week. But when I slid the key into the lock of the front door, the same brass key I'd used since I was 12, it didn't turn. I frowned and tried again, jiggling it like I always did when the door swelled from humidity. Nothing. A strange unease crawled up my spine. Maybe the lock was jammed. Maybe Mark, my stepfather, had been fixing things. Again, like he loved to claim, though usually that meant breaking them worse. I knocked lightly. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, the weight of my backpack digging into my shoulder. When the door finally creaked open, my mom stood there, but something was different, something cold and unfamiliar in her face. She wasn't smiling. She didn't even seem surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" she asked flatly. I blinked, thrown off by her tone. "Ud coming home. My key doesn't work. Did you change the locks?" She crossed her arms. "Yes, I did." The words hit me like a slap. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to smile and tell me it was a mistake. She didn't. "Why?" I asked, my throat tightening. "Because," she said, her voice sharp as glass, "you don't live here anymore, Lena." My heart thudded in my chest. "What do you mean I don't live here? All my stuff's inside. My room, your old room," she interrupted. "We needed the space. Mark's turning it into a home office." From behind her, Mark appeared, leaning casually against the hallway wall with a beer in hand. His smirk made my stomach twist. He'd never liked me, not really. I'd been a reminder of the life my mom had before him. I looked between them, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was a misunderstanding. But their silence told me everything. "Mom," I whispered, "I don't have anywhere else to go. I just finished exams. I've been working 2 jobs just to stay in school. You can't just—" "I can," she said, cutting me off again. "You're 20, Lena. It's time you learned how the world works. You've been living here for free long enough." "For free," I choked out. "I paid for groceries when I could. I cleaned. Enough." She snapped. "You always play the victim. You're an adult now. Act like one." My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to ask what I'd done wrong, to make her remember the mother who used to kiss my forehead good night. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who looked like her but felt like a stranger. Behind me, the porch light flickered, washing everything in a harsh yellow glow. The air was cold, the kind that seeps into your bones. I took a shaky breath. "Can I at least get my things?" Mark smirked. "We packed them up. They're in the garage. Don't take too long." My mother's expression didn't soften, not even as I bent to pick up my backpack and stepped back from the door. When she closed it, the click of the lock echoed like the final note of a song I didn't know had ended. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the door that had once meant home, and then, with the night pressing in around me, I walked away. The nights after that were the hardest. The first one, I slept on my friend Maya's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and someone else's life. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the door slam again, heard the deadbolt click. That sound followed me everywhere, like a cruel echo reminding me that I was unwanted. I told Maya it was fine, that I'd find a place soon, but I didn't believe my own words. Between classes and my 2 part-time jobs, one at a diner and one shelving books at the library, I barely had time to breathe, let alone look for an apartment I could afford. During the day, I kept busy. At night, when everything went quiet, my thoughts got louder. I replayed every conversation with my mom, searching for signs I'd missed, moments that hinted she was planning this. There were little things I realized, her distant tone, the way she'd started referring to the house as our home, instead of yours and mine. Always including Mark in decisions that used to be between us. It wasn't sudden, it was a slow erasure. A month passed like that, sleeping on different couches, eating instant noodles, pretending I was okay. My clothes were still in those boxes she'd shoved into the garage, but I couldn't bring myself to go back for them. The thought of standing on that porch again made my chest ache. One rainy afternoon, while running to catch my bus, I saw her, Mrs. Alvarez, our old neighbor. She was carrying groceries, struggling with her umbrella, and I helped her without thinking. Her smile was warm, familiar, almost enough to thaw me. "Lena, my goodness, it's been so long," she said, holding my hand. "How's school? Your mother must be so proud of you." I hesitated. "We haven't really talked." Her brow furrowed. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Your grandparents would be disappointed to know that. They always said the house was meant to keep you safe, no matter what." Her words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" She looked surprised. "Didn't your mother tell you? They left a part of the property to you. Said it was to make sure you'd always have a place to come home to." I froze right there on the sidewalk, rain soaking through my shoes. My grandparents, the only people who ever made me feel loved unconditionally, had thought of me even after death. But my mother never said a word. That night, after my shift, I went to the library's computer lab. I dug through old emails, legal notices, anything I could find with my family's name on it. And there it was, a scanned copy of my grandparents' will, attached to an old message from their attorney. It was all in black and white. "To our granddaughter, Lena Marie Harper, we leave an undivided share of the Harper residence." My chest tightened. It wasn't just sentiment. It was law. But the property records I found online told a different story. My mother and Mark had transferred the title entirely to their names 2 years ago, right after my grandparents passed. My name was gone, erased like I'd never existed. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the screen, my heart thudding in my ears. I should have cried, but no tears came. For the first time since that night on the porch, I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious, not because they'd locked me out, but because they'd stolen what my grandparents had wanted me to have. In that moment, I made myself a quiet promise. I wouldn't beg for love or belonging anymore. I would take back what was mine. Justice wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a goal, and I was ready to fight for it. The first time I walked into a law office, I felt like an imposter. The receptionist's smile was polite, but my thrift, store blazer and trembling hands gave away how out of place I felt. Still, I had the will printed neatly in a folder, highlighted and tabbed like it was my lifeline, because it was. Mr. Keene, the lawyer who agreed to meet me, was older, with silver hair and calm eyes that made me feel like maybe I wasn't crazy. He listened quietly as I explained everything, the night my mom changed the locks, Mrs. Alvarez's comment, the discovery of the will, and the forged property records. When I finally finished, my throat raw from holding back emotion, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You have a strong case, Lena. What your mother and stepfather did isn't just cruel, it's illegal." For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel. Hope. We spent weeks gathering evidence. Mr. Keene pulled property records, compared signatures, and found the date my name vanished from the deed, just 3 months after my grandparents' funeral. My mother had signed my name on the transfer form. The signature looked eerily similar, but not quite right. "That's forgery," he said quietly. "She tried to erase you." Those words lingered in my head for days. I thought about the woman who had once braided my hair and read me bedtime stories, the mother who used to call me her miracle baby. When had she decided I was disposable? The lawsuit filing sent shockwaves through our small town. My phone buzzed constantly, relatives, old friends, even strangers who heard the gossip. My mother wasted no time crafting her version of the story. On social media, she called me an ungrateful child, suing her parents for money. She posted smiling photos of her and Mark under captions about family loyalty and respect. It hurt, of course it did, but I was done defending myself. When the court date arrived, I sat across from her for the first time in almost a year. The courtroom was small, the air thick with silence. She looked perfect as ever, pearl earrings, pressed blouse, but her eyes avoided mine. Mark sat beside her, his smugness replaced by a nervous twitch in his jaw. My lawyer spoke first, laying out the evidence, the will, the forged transfer, the missing funds from the estate account. Then he played the voicemail I'd saved, the one from the night she locked me out. Her voice filled the courtroom. "Don't come back here, Lena. You don't have a home anymore." The judge's brow furrowed. My mother's face went pale. When it was her turn to speak, her voice wavered between defensiveness and guilt. "I was trying to teach her responsibility," she said. "She needed to learn to survive on her own. The judge cut her off gently by taking what was legally hers. She didn't answer. Then came the letters, the ones my grandparents had written before they died, which Mr. Keene had somehow tracked down from their lawyer's archives. In one, my grandmother had written, "Promise us, Angela, that you'll protect Lena's place in this family." Tears slipped down my face as the courtroom went silent. When the verdict came, I could hardly breathe. The judge ruled that the property transfer was fraudulent and that I was entitled to 35% ownership of the house, plus compensation for damages and legal costs. As the gavel struck, my mother's shoulders sagged. For a fleeting second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost because while she had tried to take my home away, I'd found something stronger, my voice. The papers felt heavier than I expected when Mr. Keene handed them to me. My name, printed in black ink, tied to a percentage of the house I had once thought I'd lost forever. 35%, not everything but enough to prove that I had not been erased, not legally, not emotionally. For a moment, I just stared at them. The house on Elm Street had loomed over my childhood like a guardian. Now it felt like a battlefield. I could have sold my share immediately, taken the money, and walked away, but something inside me whispered that this wasn't just about money. It was about justice, about reclaiming dignity from the people who had tried to erase me. Over the next few months, my mother and stepfather tried everything. Guilt trips, negotiations, threats disguised as advice. I ignored them all. They didn't understand one thing. I wasn't asking for forgiveness, and I wasn't negotiating. I was taking what was rightfully mine. Finally, they had no choice but to buy me out at full market value. The process was cold and clinical real estate agents, bank statements, contracts, but I watched them squirm as they realized how much it would cost. Mark's jaw tightened every time he had to sign another line. My mother, once untouchable, looked like a woman learning humility too late. When the transaction was complete, I had enough to pay off my debts, secure an apartment, and still save for the future. But I didn't feel triumphant yet. Triumph would come later. For now, I felt relief, and that was enough. I decided to honor my grandparents' memory in a way that mattered. With part of the money, I founded the Harper Hope Fund, a scholarship for students estranged from their families or struggling with abandonment. It was small at first, just enough to help a few students each year, but the gratitude I received from them was larger than any sum of money. I realized then that revenge wasn't about hurting the people who had wronged me. It was about creating something better in their absence. Still, there was one thing I needed to do. One evening, I walked down Elm Street and stopped in front of the house I had once called home. The curtains were drawn tight. I could see the faint glow of the living room lamp through the edges, but no one looked out. I imagined my mother and Mark inside, silent and uncomfortable. My chest tightened with a mixture of sorrow and satisfaction. I whispered to the house, "You can keep your walls. I found my home." It wasn't about gloating, it was about closure. I had faced the betrayal, fought the battle, and walked out with my head held high. I didn't need their approval, their love, or even their acknowledgement. I had reclaimed what was mine and transformed the pain into purpose. The wind stirred the autumn leaves around me, brushing my face like a gentle reminder that life moves forward. I turned away from the house, and for the first time in a long while, I felt light. My home wasn't a building anymore, it was in me, in my strength, in my choices, and in the lives I would touch through the scholarship. And in that quiet moment, I smiled, not because I had taken revenge, but because I had finally found peace. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in punishment. It's in rising above the people who tried to keep you down.